That's one thing too. This idea that here we get into the theology. Jesus was a liberal. There's nothing about him that was. I mean,
No, I wouldn't. He wasn't a liberal. He was a
well, okay,
communist.
no, he wasn't. Wasn't even
Oh, he
close.
was. Yeah, the whole Bernie thing. I just can't. And the DNC links. We're going to leak that he's an atheist, and that to me is an incredible distinction because there is no way in hell anyone in Europe, I'm not just talking Britain, anyone in Europe would be like, right, we're gonna get Bernie, we're gonna get our political opponents by revealing that they're an atheist.
Right.
No, I mean, that would reflect badly on the person who said it.
Yeah.
It would be if someone said, "Oh, by the way, that guy over there, he's not an atheist. He's an atheist." People would be like, "What are you saying that for? That's weird. Just go away. We really don't care." I mean, this is the thing. This is the difference, and it always just it grates on me. In fact, whenever I see American politics, when you guys talk about God, you talk about God quite a lot.
Yeah.
And it's just like God. And a British politician would never bring up God. Just it would be the end of the conversation, and everyone would be like, "Oh, God, why is he bringing this up?" You know, it's weird.
Yeah, I guess it makes less sense too for the Democratic Party, since that is that is distinctly the atheist wing right now. I think that's changing. We've talked about that. Listen, I mean, I make and if you wanna hit me on my Christianity, people do all the time. I'm a Christian. I'm pretty open about it, and I'm always willing to discuss it. And we've had good discussions. But I have talked with Not Gay Jared about this. We have less in common with a lot of young Christians because it's sort of switched. Where atheists were all liberal because of the abortion issue, and now a lot of young Christians have the Bernie bumper sticker because they think, well, Jesus talked about sharing. And so I share more common ground intellectually with a lot of younger atheists because they're becoming more libertarian and Christians are becoming more left, whereas it used to be the opposite. I don't know if that makes sense, if that is
Yeah, no, it makes it makes sense, and I know what you're talking about. And this is something that I always found very weird about the United States. You seem to be the least Christian country ever. I mean, like if one was to look at the life of Jesus, you would think that all of your Christians would be Bernie Sanders supporters.
No. Not killing the baby up until conception, and no freedom and lack of empathy.
That's my point, isn't it? That's two issues. That's not like
everything about it though. It's being a total. That's one thing too. This idea that here we get into the theology. Jesus was a liberal. There's nothing about him that was. I mean,
I wouldn't. He wasn't a liberal. He was a
okay. No, he wasn't. Wasn't even close.
Oh, he was.
No.
He was.
Give me the justification on that one.
Okay, how exactly does a rich man get into heaven?
Well, you're talking about a parable. We're talking about through the eye of a needle, right? So it's like taking Revelations very literally. Whereas when you look at the literal,
I'm saying take it literally.
Okay, but the very literal examples of money.
It's religion, isn't it? It's concern for the poor and the downtrodden, and the advice to the rich is to give your wealth away, and go and do good.
Key advice there, right? What did you just say? The what for the rich? The advice for the rich. There was never an advocation of a system of government on forcing the rich.
Sorry, say again.
I said, you just said advice for the rich. And I think that's true. And that's why wealthy Christians give far more than any other group on earth. But it's not a system of government for the rich.
No, I know. I'm not.
Right. So I don't think of Jesus as a
religion.
Yes.
But you would think that you would think that Christians would be a lot more. If I live like Jesus, then I'm being a better Christian.
Well, I think more Christians do. If you look at charitable giving and you look at serving their community, I think Christians, the reason why a lot of them are conservatives, is they don't believe that government will do that more effectively. So they take it upon themselves. So I don't see it as a Christian worldview there's nothing charitable about spending somebody else's money, about stealing money and spending it. So that's communism.
Now, is this the argument Jesus would make?
Well, Jesus was asked directly about it, and he never made an argument in the favor of a system of government. He deliberately avoided it.
I know. He was not involved in government, but
well, he was an anti-government, basically. I mean, he was put to death not just because of religion. He was put to death for going against the political establishment of the day, and
no, he didn't go against the political establishment.
The Pharisees and Sadducees totally the system. If you talk about like today in the banks, they were completely intertwined with government back then.
They were, but the Romans didn't have any interest in Jewish squabbles. I mean, they didn't care that there was a Jewish heretic that the Pharisees wanted to put to death, and Pontius Pilate even just shrugged and washed his hands and said, "Look, this isn't anything to do with me," didn't he? So
he was a germaphobe too. That's the part that's another. They didn't have hand sanitizer around. No, I think this is an important point though, because it's often tossed at Christians, and that's what's created a lot of young Christian liberals. It's just not accurate.
And it's not an attack or anything like
no,
that.
No.
It's, one of those things that, I mean, and this is the thing that I always try to contrast with Islam. Christianity is definitely sort of a bottom-up religion. It's obviously it's concerned about the poorest and most vulnerable and what good can be done for them, whereas Islam is very much top-down, prescriptive, authoritarian. And so when people are just like, well, all religions are the same, aren't they? It's like, no, they're completely different. And only someone who doesn't know anything about these religions would suggest that maybe they're all the same just because they're religions. It's like saying all governments are the same because they're all governments. It's silly. It's just totally ill-informed, and it really annoys me hearing it.
Yes.
And we hear it all the time.
Yeah, well, I think you just sort of, in a roundabout way, made the case for why Christianity would be more libertarian and Islam would be more communist. Allow me to explain. Because as you're talking about, Christianity is from the bottom up, right? So a good example with Islam, why it's spread by force. Socialism, communism, at the end of the day, can only be applied through force, through government force, through violence. At the end of the day, if you don't do this, the government is going to send in men with guns. Whereas the idea of self-governance, of libertarianism, can only be done through free will, which is why if you look in Europe, you see a lot of, like you said, secularists, they give far, far less. They're far less charitable, where they have bigger governments. In the United States, much smaller government, but people are exponentially more charitable. And I would say that that's a big part, particularly when you take the stats of the Christian right. Those are the most charitable people on earth, whether we like it or not.
Okay, I think I mean, libertarian is probably not really how I'd phrase it.
Okay.
I mean, if anything, I mean, Jesus sounds like he was running a hippie commune, So
when he tells people to go buy a sword.
Yeah, well, let's not even go into it, because then we get into what's valid and what's not in the Bible.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, generally, at least by Saul of Tarsus's estimation, he seems to have been a bit of a hippie commune leader, whereas Islam is a lot more like fascism, where every Muslim is a Nazi. Not that I'm saying Muslims are Nazis.
Hashtag all Muslims, Sargon said it. Get that trending, son.
But it creates the dichotomy. It creates the us-them, whereas Christianity doesn't really have that.
Yeah, I think, like you said, like Islam is much more prescriptive, and it's pretty clear their system of government and law. And this is the difference. This is what makes it tough. And I understand why atheists have issues with Christianity, and I think there's a misunderstanding of the separation of church and state doesn't exist. It's not in the Constitution. But I understand why atheists can get leery of people using their faith. I get mad. Not gay. Jared and I talk about it when politicians use it to pander on the other side. I'm like, oh, okay, you're clearly lying about it. The difference with Islam and Christianity, and I think you're fair to make this comparison. I think we're tracking here. Is Islam is government hat, religious hat, theology hat, community hat, all is one. With Christianity, you can go, okay, this is my faith, these are my morals, and then at some point, national security, you take off the religion hat, the faith hat, and put on the American hat.
I mean, it is directly in line with what Jesus said. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, render unto God what is God's.
Right.
That you could not get a more blatant distinction and a more blatant endorsement of secularism from Jesus Christ.
Right.
You couldn't get a more distinct, specific endorsement of secularism and how Christianity shouldn't be running the state.
Right.
From his own mouth. Whereas Islam is completely the opposite. It was
I think we use the term
be
secularism. Like a good example is the United States was the first country to really do that, right? Like no Church of England. But faith was way more...
We're still not a secular state. I mean, the Queen is the head of the church and she's the head of the state.
So you're technically not a So technically the United States is a much more secular nation, but obviously, people are
on
Christian.
paper you would think so. But
That's
I tell you what, if any politician brought up God, it would be silence in the room
until someone insults another man in Parliament. I've always thought that was funny.
Well, yeah.
And then they argue about civility in the United States. I'm like, have you ever seen Parliament?
Yeah, but there's something honest about it, isn't there?
There is.
They're just going hammer and tongs at each other. It's like, yo, get the daggers out.
Yeah. No, this is it's an interesting dialogue. Well, that's what I would say. When people say, kind of like you have a qualm with when people use the word liberal, right? I sit with communists like, well, hold on a second. Even if Jesus were like a hippie commune on his own, he never advocated that for a system of government.
No, he didn't.
So
which is what social justice warriors are super guilty of doing. They take Matthew 5 and say, "Oh, this is a prescription for government. Turn the other cheek.
Right.
Don't defend your country. Don't no borders." That's a prescription for an individual. It's a very individualistic kind of, turn the other cheek. If Stephen's a jerk to me, I would probably turn the.
There's no getting around that Christianity teaches better morals as well. I mean, there's no. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're if you were going to compare them to. In a sort of warlike way, they're definitely weaker. They turn the other cheek when you've been struck by your enemy.
Sure,
it's not going to win you any battles, but it's certainly a lot more high-minded.
Right. Well, that's also out of context, though. Too. A lot of people historically that was a challenge. That was a slapping of a glove, turning the other cheek. That was a duel, get this cheek. That's what it was. A lot of people don't understand that entirely. And if you read the Bible later on, I mean, Jesus could turn the other cheek because he was perfect, right? So he had a perfect cheek to turn. It's a little different if your cheek is pockmarked and marred.
Yeah, but he's still setting the example. He's setting the tone.
Yes.
He's suggesting, look, if you're going to be perfect, then what you do is you don't do violence, you turn the other cheek. And was it Simon who cut off the Roman centurion's ear?
Yeah. Was it Simon?
Was it Simon? I can't remember now.
I always forget
Simon
that.
Peter, yeah.
God, you're the worst Christians ever.
You know what? That's something... Yeah. Jesus was like, "Stop it! Hey, this is a nice man.
We talked about this.
We talked about this." That's another thing too. Even when I was a kid, I was traveling, I was doing I was 17. I remember I was in New York with a comedian, and he was saying, what the opposite of love is? Fear. In the Bible, fear is the equivalent to hate. And I'm going, no, that's actually not true. Because think about it. You talk about that with the ear chopped off. I remember I got into it with a pastor. And this is, again, we're just whether people believe it or not. I was saying, think of it as a parable. Jesus was very afraid before this idea. If you read about it, saying, hey, if I don't have to do this, if I don't have to be crucified, please let there be another way. And that was another thing. As a Christian, I get mad being grown up because I'm terrified of a lot of things. And I people say, well, if you're afraid, that means you don't have God in you because God doesn't allow you to be afraid. And so I think a lot of secularists hear this BS and they think that all Christians agree with it. And I remember reading it going, well, gosh, this seems like Jesus is afraid here. Like he seems like kind of scared of being crucified, so it's okay. And that is something where it's just, again, the same social justice warriors who go, Jesus was a communist, like you should never be afraid. Well, no, you should be afraid if someone wants to chop your head off.
Yeah, it's irrational to suggest that someone shouldn't be afraid of their impending death. What the hell? And the thing is, right, the funny thing is, there are only two types of people who aren't afraid of that: madmen and stoics. They are the people. Have you ever read any Stoicism?
No, when you hear the word stoic, you just think of like Germans with lifeless doll eyes. Yeah,
there's a reason for that. The Greek school of thought that we know as Stoicism, they will. I mean, there's a lot in there that's good. You're responsible for everything you do. So you take the personal responsibility of everything you do, and the only way things can affect you is if you let them affect you. So if you're I can't think of an example now, but if something happens to you,
facts. You have no facts, Sargon. You have no facts.
If someone triggers you on the internet, then it's up to you to not trigger, right? But then they take this to its extreme. It's like, well, if you're being tortured, that's your fault,
right?
And if you're in tremendous pain, that's your fault as well. It's like, okay, calm down. I don't think that when you're being tortured, you can reasonably say, well, you should have known it was going to come to this because, that seems like a bit of a stretch to me. But
that's getting into leftism with women raped by Muslims. Well, you shouldn't have not worn the burqa.
Yeah,
what do you
keep
expect?
the arm's length.
They saw your eyelids.
Saying no rape.
Yeah, exactly. Well, did you ever see the United States, the liberal, sorry, the Democrat advocacy for how to prevent rape? Did you ever see that?
No, I didn't.
It was like about screaming, urinating yourself. You never heard about this? It was to make yourself. Do you remember this? It was to make yourself as unappealing to be raped as possible. This was actually like given out as a pamphlet, like try and throw up.
But I mean, aren't you a bit in the moment? It's like, oh, hang on a sec.
I don't know. These were written by Nicole Richie, I assume.
Jesus. Yeah, I've not heard that, but that is amusing.
Well, we can bring that up sometime now that we're talking about it. Or people can go to, I think we covered it louderwithcrowder.com. It was actually like handed out, which was so funny because it goes against this idea, right, of feminism that rape is never a crime of sex, of power. But it's like, well, if it's a crime of power, they wouldn't care if you pee yourself.
Exactly. They're not doing it because they find you attractive. They're doing it because they want you to suffer. But to be honest with you, I'm not really down with that narrative at all. Actually, no. I've got to say, I don't like it, and I disagree with it. Because
Wait, peeing yourself, or that rape is an act of power?
honestly, I'm against both.
Okay, that's fair.
But yeah, the rape's an act of power. I think that there are definitely circumstances where rape is an act of power.
Like male prisons.
But I don't think for most people that's the case. I think that for most... Because the reason I say this is because, like, most rapes are committed by someone who knows the victim. And a lot of the time it's in an intimate setting where, for example, they might have a relationship or something like that. But then things go farther than the woman would like, and the guy ends up raping her. I think in situations like that, rape is probably an act of passion rather than an act of power. I don't think it's necessarily the guy trying to dominate the woman. I think that, biologically, his blood is up, and I'm not in any way trying to excuse this. This is what, this is why everyone should be
Hashtag all rape's okay.
On you.
Sargon said so. Hashtag that.
He lost control of himself and all that sort of thing. It's completely unconscious.
Well, I also think it's very unfair to take, let's say, a couple who are in the middle of having sex, and obviously if a woman ever says no, no means no. But I also think it's very unfair.
Sorry, you've broken up there, mate.
Oh, can you not hear me? Can you hear me now? What's happening? Is his internet Brexiting? Can you not hear me?
I don't know.
I can hear you now.
Oh,
he's dazed.
Can you hear me now?
Sorry, what? Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh.
You were saying it's unfair.
Well, I also think it's unfair for, let's say, a long-term couple having sex, and the woman, they're having sex, and then she doesn't enjoy the sex. She's like, stop. And the guy maybe goes on longer than he's supposed to. Horrible, yes, probably a germ. But it's not the same as violent rape. It doesn't make it acceptable. And then you scale that back even further, regretful sex, as Lena Dunham wants you to believe, and that's not rape at all.
That's certainly not rape.
Right.
Yeah, and I agree with you. There are obviously differences in severity from each crime. But yeah, the narrative that rape is always about power, I don't buy it. I think a lot of the time it's about passion.
I think you're right.
Not that makes it any better.
No, it doesn't make it any better. But again, it's something that they set to make it seem as though men willingly are more mean-spirited, because women go like, well, I would never do that just out of power, as though there isn't some innate sexual attraction. It makes men seem much more like monsters than impulsive, which both are bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, are we talking all rape, or are we talking, because we've talked about this about rape within Islam, is very much about power.
In Islam,
dominance.
Yes. In Islamic cultures, it is. I've told the story about the cab driver who said he was going to F me and my family before we went home to my dad. And it's like a very common thing. Their insults are not like F you. It's like, I'm going to copulate with you. We ran into this all the time in Montreal. Yeah. I've told the story too many times on this show. But
look at Sargon's privileged little face. He's never been assaulted this way.
You never heard about this? Yeah,
no, I've not heard this.
Oh yeah, that's why there's all kinds of pedophilia and stuff in Islam. This was really common. I remember I had even like friends in high school where they would say, like, make these insults, these Muslims, and kids would be like, "Well, that was pretty gay." No, it's not gay. It was like, you just said you were going to screw him. Like, no, but it's because it's going to hurt him. And we're like, that sounds pretty gay. There was a cab driver one time who cut off my dad, and my dad cut him off, and he yelled, "Cabbies suck!" And I remember this because my dad, I've told this story before, so I don't want to bore the audience, but I learned something from my dad. If ever someone is pulling up on you, walking up to your car, he unlatched the car door, but didn't open it. He said, why? Because if that person wants to keep you in and either shoot you or come through the door with a slit, whatever it is, you're exposed, but you also don't want to open the door so he can just grab it, yank it open. So you open it just enough so it's unlocked, and as he comes up, boom, you can dictate the terms and knock him back and get out if you need to protect your family. So that's how I remember this very clearly. And the cab driver came out with his cane and was actually doing this, like a probing motion. And he said, I am going to, sorry people listening, sorry mom, I'm going to fuck you. I am going to fuck you and your family before you go home. And I remember I was a smart-ass kid. I guess, like, you're gonna, what are you, gay? I mean, I was like, shut up, Steven. I am going to fuck you.
Just start taking off your shirt or what?
But it was very common, and that's because in certain cultures, it is a dominant thing. I mean, probably the same thing with the Greeks.
There certainly is. There is that aspect, and it is in more domineering cultures that you'll find it.
Yes.
I mean, the Vikings used to do the same thing. You know, they didn't really discriminate who they raped when they were pillaging. Anything with a hole in a lot of cases. So sometimes it is about power, but I think the majority of rapes are probably about passion.
Although with the Vikings, it probably was worse. You probably had some women who, like, the Vikings always ransacked their village and they were just never raped at a certain point. Like, oh my gosh, you guys!
What's wrong with me?
I hope no one rapes me. I'm all alone. I'm like, You're good.
I watched your communism video, your refutation of communism, and it was very good apart from one thing.
Wait, which one?
Karl Marx.
Oh, the Karl Marx. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the Marx one. Yeah. The distinction between private and personal property is one you didn't make. And I don't blame you, because it's easy to think that what they mean is you can't own anything. Mm-hmm. But there is, and I made this mistake myself until some communist kindly decided to come and comment on a video I'd mentioned it in. But basically the distinction is personal property is just the stuff you own, and you're apparently okay to own it. Mm-hmm. Private property, when they say that, and I don't know why they don't use more specific language, but it's actually not like, the things you privately own. It's frankly the means of production. So anything, if you had like a workshop and you wanted to employ an assistant to be able to make something with you so you could sell something, that would be the means of production. That would be private property rather than your personal property. And so you would have to, do some sort of, give it up to the state, have some sort of sharing agreement with the guy. I don't really know what the solution is on that.
The means of production, you mean?
Yeah, but the point is it's about collective ownership of the means of production. So if you had a workshop, you wanted to hire an assistant, you would have to give the assistant part ownership of your workshop.
Okay, a couple of things there. It's been a while since I've done the video, so for those people listening, obviously you probably don't remember everything you've talked about, but if I remember correctly, the video, I did address means of production and private property separately, because they issued those separately. So they didn't include them as one.
When they say private property, they mean the means of production.
But they talked about private property and then went on to describe separately, later on in the video, means of production. So they were the ones who made
the original video.
The original video that I was refuting.
I can't remember off my head.
Yes.
I just remember I had
I do remember that.
Bring up.
Because
just
I remember
in case you weren't sure.
No, but you're right. You're right. And I still disagree with you. But you're right, and I remember going, this video is misleading because I think the maker of the video deliberately wanted to separate it, because the maker of the video was even further to the left than Karl Marx, despite them trying to act objective. And if people actually watch it and, watch their video on Adam Smith, it's remarkably different. Like, one is clearly advocacy and one is like, this guy kind of believed this, the invisible hand of the markets.
I tell you get that a lot. There are quite a lot of philosophy YouTube channels I follow, and you can the younger ones are all very much. And honestly, I wouldn't quite go as far as say advocacy, but it's definitely bordering on advocacy for Marx.
Right.
And I'm really bothered by this because, Karl Marx was a very intelligent man, obviously. He did have a very sound critique of capitalism, and he did have a lot of good ideas. The problem is none of them translated into his proposed solutions, which were terrible in every single way. And I can't believe that people can look at communism on paper and go, yeah, this will work. This will obviously not work.
Right.
This will obviously end up with gulags. It's built into the text almost. That anyone and Islam does exactly the same. It's about the in-group, out-group dichotomy. Mm-hmm. The first thing a Muslim terrorists do is declare that the other Muslims they're killing in Baghdad or wherever aren't Muslims. Because if they're part of the in-group, you're not allowed to do anything to them. Mm-hmm. If they're part of the out-group, you are allowed to do things to them. And it's the same with communism, with the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. You would just go ahead and declare anyone you want to be bourgeoisie, and then they're in a capitalist oppressor, and it's okay to do whatever you want to them.
They will drag them from their decadent houses!
Exactly. And this is built into the Communist Manifesto. It's built into communism itself. And honestly, I've been planning on doing a video for ages, just because I just can't see how people can't predict where this is going. And there's a reason that in practically every country that's adopted communism, in fact, I can't think of a country that's adopted communism and hasn't had a bloody purge of the opposition.
Right.
And I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, and I no, you're absolutely right. And to go back to your point, the criticism, which I understand, I want to say I was responding to a video, so that's important. Secondly, even if I weren't, so that's the context, because they said private property and then go on to means of production. Even if I weren't, and here's the thing where I think there's a disconnect. Okay, so we talk about private property. So I don't want to be misrepresentative. What would you say, like maybe your house, maybe your own personal money?
Personal property. That's the difference. Private property is something you own, but produces something. Personal property is something you own that doesn't produce.
So personal property. So let's say
as
maybe
I understand,
yes. So let's assume that the video wasn't, and let's take your kind of premise here because again, I was addressing a video, not what you're bringing up. So personal property. Let's say that would it be like, let's say your house, your furniture, maybe you're spending money.
Your house, your car, your furniture, all that sort of thing.
Right. Whatever personal means you have.
Yes.
Okay. Well, here's the thing that people don't understand. How do you think that the means of production is created from a business owner?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
It is always from personal property. Everything you see was a savings account. Hired Not Gay Jared. The Young Turks, whether you get the video, the makeup, all that stuff comes from personal property. And that's the thing. You can't really separate the two because all of a sudden there's a means of production. This is why communism, outside of a few weapons, really hasn't created a whole lot. It hasn't been particularly innovative because people... The space toilet. People are incentivized to use their own personal property, if we're saying personal property, to create eventually what is private property, means of production, the ability to employ people. It can't happen, and government can't create that. So...
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
You could have a system where you petition the government with a proposal and say, right, okay, I want to open a people's supermarket down the street, and I want to get the money to put it all. But you could do all of this, but it would be massively inefficient.
But how do you do it if there are no people taking risk and no wealth creators?
Well, you would have obviously some sort of government official that decided yes or no.
Yeah, but who would they tax? If no one creates anything, again, no one is using their personal property to create private means of. At a certain point, it can only live off the backs.
Yeah,
of
I think we've established
systems.
why communist societies are always piss poor.
Well, that's my point. Is they teach us in school, right?
I'm not a communist.
No, I know, but I understand because the argument you brought up, and I don't say this because I know you're very intelligent, so I don't want your argument. I'm not saying Sargon is ignorant or stupid. What I'm saying is that's taught in colleges. And contrary, I played ignorant conservative on TV. I've learned all of that stuff in college, and the disconnect is people don't understand because, again, this sort of Citizens United, corporations aren't people. Yeah, they are. Down the line, someone took a personal risk and created that means of production. And so there's a sleight of hand where, no, we're not talking about this desk. We're not talking about your house. We're talking about the factory that built all of that. Well, hold on. How did that factory get created? Well, someone was in a house like you with that stuff, and they put it up as collateral or they saved, but we don't talk about them. And people just don't think far enough down the line because at the end of the day...
There is, but I think there's also a distinction to be made here because, this seems to be the reason why we have limited liability companies. Mm-hmm. As in, if your company goes under and you owe lots of money, you don't lose your house because you're on limited liability. So
does that apply to an LLC? I don't know if it's an S, because I know LLC is more so a pass-through entity for like you can't be sued. But I don't know if it's like a corporation where, again, I don't know.
In Britain, you can be a limited company, which means that you don't end up losing everything you own if the company goes under.
Okay.
The company just loses everything and gets taken by the banks or whoever you owe money to. So yeah, the distinction though is if you've got that protection, then you can't really say, well, this is just this is my personal property because I created it out of nothing. It's like, well, if you're not going to be held responsible for any problems that come along in the company going under, then why should you then also have the benefit of saying, well, it's my personal property? But B, I think that when it gets to a certain size, there does have to be some sort of cutoff point where you accept that this has gone beyond just your personal business. When you're an international corporation, you're employing tens of thousands of people, you're pumping out massive amounts of, say, carbon, things into the environment.
It changes depending on the cause du jour.
There is definitely a degree of responsibility for the sort of weight of impact your company can have.
Sure.
So I do agree. I definitely think that there is a point at which it stops being just a small mum and pop thing and becomes a corporation where it's something separate and it's its own sort of institution by now. Mm-hmm. But I do agree that that you're right. These things do usually start as small businesses that grow and grow and grow because they're successful. So frankly, this is probably why communism. I don't like the idea. I don't like the idea of starting a small business and then being told it's the people's business.
Right. But then it becomes a question of, okay, is it the government's right to take over Starbucks when it's one store, when it's 5, or when it's 5,000? When does the government get to say, you've made enough on your investment, now it's ours? And that's a question no communist has answered successfully.
Yeah, but we don't. The government doesn't take over private corporations.
Private property, means of production.
Yeah, I know, but I mean but we don't. We allow these things to remain private.
Right. Not under communism.
Oh yeah, under communism. I don't know. I
was still on the communism thread. That's what I was. Yes.
Yeah, no, I know. But I mean, as if it was a good idea. We're arguing, it seems, and I'm just like, this is a terrible idea.
We both hate communism. No, I understand, because I think I saw that criticism maybe by some people. I'm going, well, first off, you always have to take in context if we're addressing someone's, like, for example, when we argue about the Young Turks.
It's not a big deal. It was just a small thing, that just before the communist pedants turn up on your video going, you're wrong, Stephen, because blah, 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 blah.
Right,
blah.
I know.
Just thought I'd let you know about it.
Oh, it happens all the time. It happens like with the Young Turks, even from people who like what we have to say. They're like, well, why did you address the militia? Why didn't you address, like, because we did that in another video. We're addressing this argument right now. We don't have time for all of it.
It was a good video, and it was on point.
Well, thank you. I try, and you know what? I think the reason why we're having these conversations. I remember when YouTube, right, there were a lot of dumb Christians there, who YouTube was anyone could upload it. It was just like you had kids who were just uploading themselves, having super soaker fights, right? And so these Christians would go on with these very, very, I guess, sort of misinformed, textbook apologetics, and try and take on debates that they couldn't handle. And I certainly don't feel qualified in the realm, because I've been around other either Christian apologists or scientists where I just want to sit and listen. So I do think for a long time it was like the Young Turks, who I think were just as unreasonable back then. And then, but they looked more reasonable in the face of a lot of sort of self-professed Christian conservatives. Because they would come on and be like, well, if there's evolution, how come the monkeys aren't changing right now? And be like,
oh God, yeah, why are they still monkeys?
Yeah, exactly. And I was rolling my eyes just as much as you are.
No, I can.
And so I was like, I'm not going to wade into that firefight, because I have to. Half of the time speaking is apologizing for some guy I don't even know. But I think it's good now. I think politically the country is probably going to go Clinton, most likely, unfortunately. But I think channels like yours and what we do, you think it's going to be Trump?
I think that it's more likely to be Trump than Clinton now, after the DNC leaks and the splitting of the party, effectively. I mean, I don't think a lot of Bernie supporters are going to vote Clinton. I watched loads of videos from people who are just interviewing them at the protests, and they're like, "Yeah, never Hillary. She's never going to get my vote." And there are thousands of these people, and it's like, Christ, man. Maybe Hillary is kind of maybe she's a bit of a house of cards.
Maybe my thought process is there hasn't been a huge bump out of the RNC. There was the CNN poll, but then there were other polls that came out and still have Clinton leading by maybe 1. Maybe Trump's ahead by a couple points in the best polls.
The ones I saw, Trump was ahead by a few points. Not many, not huge.
That was a CNN poll, but there was another one that came out. So I mean, it could be. Obviously, I'd much rather see Trump win than Hillary Clinton. I'm not a fan of either. But they didn't see a huge bump. Now, after the DNC leaks, there will be a DNC bump, and then we're left with one thing. We're left with, okay, wherever we are, the game changer is either an October surprise, of which the Clintons are the best in all of political history, the October surprise, some kind of last-minute bomb, and the debates. And Donald Trump isn't very good in the realm of debate, and Hillary Clinton if she's not having a seizure, she's actually pretty good.
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, Donald Trump doesn't have the debate his opponents want to have.
It's true.
That's the power of Donald Trump when it comes to debates. He plays the crowd. He's not arguing the issues. And Hillary does not have the charisma to play the crowd at all. And I'm sure you know that, like, people care. People don't judge a debate on who's factually right. They judge a debate on who seems most confident. Right. And Donald Trump's going to steamroller. I can't wait to see Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton going at it.
I hope you're right, but I don't think so. Have you seen her speeches on the campaign trail recently? Like now that she's full steam ahead against Trump?
There was one where she was having a bit of a coughing fit.
Yeah,
but I haven't listened to any of them.
No, I mean, she's just so... Not Gay Jared and I were talking about this. It's she just sits there and someone goes, what about Donald Trump making America great again? She just goes, I already think America's great now. And the audience laughs. And all of a sudden, she's flipped it where she's the patriot and Trump hates America. Or where she says, they go, what about Donald Trump's business experience? So she's been coached very, very well. They go, what about Donald Trump's business experience? She goes, well, yeah, but with the federal government, you can't just file bankruptcy. And the audience laughs. And so I think she's prepped, and I think she's twisted in it where she's this sort of patriotic, pro-American candidate running against somebody who doesn't like the country, who's doom and gloom, who's pushing fear. And I don't know. I think it's interesting how it will play. I wouldn't bet on this either way. The Vegas betting odds still favor Hillary, but I wouldn't be surprised.
But there's not much in it. The thing is, I don't think you can reasonably portray Donald Trump as being anti-America. I think anyone who tries to do that is going to come off the worst, because he's so obviously pro-America. You know, he's so obviously pro-America, and I think one of Donald Trump's appeals, and something I particularly like about him, is the assessment of America. And it's very easy for a politician to do a Hillary and go, well, I think America's great already. And it's like, okay, but there are millions of people who are having a rough time of it right now who don't think America's very great. And Donald Trump is actually speaking directly to them on the issues that they actually care about. And, you know, one thing I find very strange about Donald Trump is he's surprisingly empathetic for what I was going to say for Donald Trump, but for the image of Donald Trump that people have, and the image he portrays on, you know, when in these debates and stuff. But when you watch him talking to people, you can see he actually is listening, and he's obviously listening for a few key data points that he can pull out of what they're saying that he can then, you know, use in his next speech or something like that. But he does listen, and he is genuinely talking to these points that there is a large segment of the population who care about. Whereas I don't think Hillary Clinton's doing that, and I don't think that she's really got the fortitude to turn around and say, well, you know what, we're getting killed on trade with China, because you probably are. I don't know anything about it, but I'm sure you are. Because no one ever criticizes Trump on that point. You know, all they say is, well, he's making all these hats in China. Is that, yes, that's what he's saying.
Right.
That's exactly his point. You know, he's literally saying, look, we're getting killed in China. I know, because I make my stuff there, and that needs to change. And honest criticism, I think, is appealing. You know, I think that's true. I think that's true, and I think it's, you know, it's one of those things. I don't think anyone really knows where this is going. I do think that Donald Trump, if he's not ahead, he tends to fold a little bit, and we saw that with the Republican debates. I always said he'll be remarkably soft on Hillary to what people think, and you see now he's more busy attacking Ted Cruz than Hillary Clinton. Hopefully he pivots. He hasn't really yet. He attacks her when he has to, but he's still busy focusing on the Republican Party. It could go either way, but here's my point. Regardless, whether Hillary wins or not, channels like yours, channels like mine, could have never existed a few years ago. Never, ever. It wouldn't have been allowed. It wouldn't have been acceptable. So culturally, I think you have a lot of younger people who are either transitioning away from the Young Turks or because the Young Turks have gone insane. Whatever your viewpoint, it is cool to see that culturally speaking, people like you and I, who 4 years ago, we would have everyone would have wanted us to hate each other. Going, isn't it? Oh yeah, we would have been fighting over something, I'm sure.
Something over, well, like today when you tried to argue communism. Can you believe this jabroni?
Go on, Mr. Republican, tell me about communism.
Yes, come on, exactly. You have to pick something. Great. Okay, well, listen. This is by the way, for those watching the web extended right now, because this I don't know if Sargon may get this on his channel or not. This is because I was playing jank earlier, and I couldn't wipe off all the bronzer. So
he was doing blackface.
Well, not Gay Jared did for a cultural appropriation.
It did not. It never happened.
That's right. It never happened. You were Rachel Dolezal, technically.
You're going to SJW hell.
Yes, exactly.
Oh Lord.
Sargon of Akkad, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it, and always welcome to come back.
My pleasure, mate.
All right.
I always enjoy our chat.
If you like this video, you might be a little disturbed, but this is taken from the full weekly free podcast video cast. You can click to see the full show down there, or my face to go to louderwithcrowder.com. There are more articles than you see here on YouTube or below me for another video. If you don't click any of them, that's fine, but expect anthrax in your mailbox.